I don't really know how to start this video. Monsters Inc. isn't a favorite film. I made that painfully clear. But why has always been a hard thing to place? I mean, it's not an unpopular opinion. I met several people who shared that thought. It's gotten a prequel, a TV series, it's still its merchandise. Heck, it's getting several high-quality names, and also this disgrace. But to explain why I put this film above all others, that's always been hard. But I love this film for it feels like my entire life, and since it's now its 20th anniversary, assuming I got this out on the right date, it feels like no other better time than to take a look at this film that's affected my life more than any other.
Also, there will be spoilers in this video, but if you somehow haven't seen this movie in 20 years, I question why you decided to watch this.
Here's why Monsters Inc. is my favorite film. Okay, now this might feel like a weird topic to start with, but I feel like to appreciate something, you must also acknowledge the not so good things in it. Let's get the obvious one out of the way. The animation hasn't aged as greatly as you might remember. A lot of the side monsters look very rough, and in general, sometimes the lighting is a bit darker than they probably wanted. Most of this though can probably be just chalked up to early CGI. As for other problems, okay, I don't have any. This film's really watertight. I try to find anything else wrong with this film, but the most I found was minor continuity errors that didn't really mean much. I would, however, kind of need to talk about one problem other people have with this film. Plagiarism. Pixar is known for its original ideas, and a world of monsters seems like an original idea, until you remember these. Yeah, well, to tackle the notion that it's a knockoff, Little Monsters isn't very well known, and Monsters Inc. was likely actually thought of before Auto Monsters, so it's safe. Also, these three are massively different worlds, and I'll go into that later more in different segments. It's also the most massive difference between Monsters Inc. and these other two. Monsters Inc. is good. Little Monsters is one of the worst films I've ever seen. It's extremely mean-spirited for a kid's film, and it's honestly really annoying. As for All Real, it's nowhere near as bad. But while it has a few cool ideas like a Monster Hunter, it's more focused on growth like humor than anything else, and it just gets repetitive after a while. Also, World of Monsters, while more unique than just things given life, is still a relatively simple concept that can be taken several different ways, and these three don't really have any similarities besides the initial concept. Also, why is it Monsters Inc. That's the only film that ever has called off being a knockoff of most Pixar films? Heck, most films aren't 100% original. It's not like Toy Story was the first thing that ever featured a living toy. Okay, but Toy Story is, of course, the first film where a toy's hierarchy gets thrown off when a new space toy comes in that believes it's actually really space character. Jim Henson's The Christmas Toy, released 9 years before Toy Story with the exact same premise. Toy Story did undeniably better, but if Monsters Inc. is going to get dragged down by this garbage, why does Toy Story get a pass? Alright, enough white knighting for a movie. Let me continue to do that. Animated films pretty consistently have some of the most interesting worlds in all of media. Sometimes though, they're either too vague or too over-explained, or interesting concept with a bad execution. Monsters Inc. is one of the best built worlds I've seen in a film. Sometimes worlds like this can fall in the trap of being too similar to our world, but I feel like they give a good balance of it being like our own world, but also its own thing. The world looks very human in architecture, but they all have this subtle, unique twist, like being more pointy or having eyes. This film also gets over the problem a lot of media has. It's not very good to have a single color dominate the movie, and this takes place in rooms that are mostly brown, blue, or gray. You'd think that's bad, but somehow I can't explain it, but they all stand out. Like, you could show me any scene from this film, and I could tell you the context of the scene. It's that standoutish. I know it was a bit harsh with the lighting of some of the characters, but the backgrounds and scenes, they all look great. But right back to world building, I like the approach here. Despite what some god-awful fanfic might say, the way the scare floor works is parallel universes. That sounds complicated, but it's actually genius. It's a simple way to explain how they get from place to place, and to explain why monsters don't interact with humans. They're in separate realms. It also plays well into the whole basis behind the movie, that being the idea of monsters in your closet. But when you look, they're never there. It's one of those things that doesn't seem like it makes sense, but when you think about it, it really does. Most animated films are based around a pair of weirdos, usually a straight man and a more comedic one. Monsters Inc. is no different. Mike is the more comedic one while Sully is the straight man. But I feel like it's more notable because it's like the best version of this relationship. Even ignoring anything released after this film, these two feel like they've been friends forever. Because I just know nothing besides the line Sully being jealous of Mike since 4th grade. Which that's contradicted in university, but that's not the focus here. You can tell there's a real long connection there, which is why them breaking up actually works. They split at the perfect time for two longtime friends, where Mike tried his hardest to go with Sully's plans, but he just finally had enough. And their reconciliation also feels like it makes sense both at the time and since Mike was with the Yeti, who's a chill dude. Tons. But besides that, Sully is just a nice guy, and his evolution of hating Boo to being curious about her, to putting his life on the line for her, is also perfectly paced. As for Mike, while he is comedic relief, he's the best kind of comedic relief there is. The one that actually has a major part of the story instead of just being a joke dispenser. But when he needs to be funny, he's hilarious, but I'll get to that later. They're not the only characters though. Boo may not talk a lot, but she's super endearing. The Yeti is fun. Celia may seem like a forced love interest, but she's super important to the story actually, and has a major part in the end. George appears in like 3 scenes he sound one of Pixar's best characters. Roz. But I feel like there's 2 characters I really need to talk about, so let's give them their own section. Pixar has villains. Most are lame. They have some good ones like the Prospector and Hopper, but when it comes to ones that really stand out, there's 3. Syndrome and Randall and Waternoose. Starting with Waternoose, I could talk about him for 4 minutes 11 seconds. So I did. Some things I missed in that very rushed yet still successful video, which likely will have more views than all videos I actually put effort into combined. Waternoose is not just the perfect twist villain, but kind of the perfect villain, at least for the story. He's not just an evil businessman, he's got a heart. He truly feels sorry that he has to get rid of Mike and Sully. Though of course, it's because he lost a good employee, not a good person. But even then, he's genuinely a good guy to be around when his business isn't under threat. Businessmen villains are quite overused nowadays, and I'm sure if this was made today, not only would he be a one-dimensional twist villain who appears for 30 seconds throughout the entire film before being shown to be the bad guy in the final act, he'd also be a generic corporations are bad villain, despite, you know. But I talked about Waternoose before. Let's finally follow up on my over a year-long promise to talk about Randall. Randall's been both one of my favorite villains and one of my favorite characters for 2 decades. But why? Well, there's a lot of reasons, but I think a simple way to put it is this. Randall is a Disney Renaissance villain in 3D. He's one of those villains like Scar or Gaston or Ursula, where they're basically pure evil and extremely despicable, but they're just so entertaining in their evilness that you just love them anyways. The kind you love every single second they're on screen, but it's still sort of satisfying to see them taken down. You can tell Steve Buscemi had so much fun here. Not to mention, I just have a lot of weird personal connections to Randall. He's the reason my favorite animal is a chameleon. Me watching his first scene is one of my earliest memories. I had a Randall plush on my Christmas for like a decade until I finally got one. I'm pretty sure he's a bootleg, but I still love him. I really like characters whose names started with the letter R because my name does it too. I'm weird like that. And before you ask, yes, it also applies to her. Randall is a character who I'm always happy to see, despite, you know, being a big, scary, evil newt man. Humor is subjective. We all know that. We also know that one of the most important parts of humor is surprise. If you predict a joke, hear it again, it probably won't be funny, no matter how funny it is the first time you heard of it. With that said, Monster Inc. is the only thing I've ever seen that is consistently funny pretty much every time I rewatch it. And I've seen it more times than I've seen The Sun. I can't explain it. It just never fails to make me happy. I mean, this film has some of the most iconic running gags and scenes in an animated film. I love that the entire world just has this silent universal agreement to always cover Mike's face. I'm not gonna run down every single joke in the film. I'm sure you've all seen the movie by now. It's just so good. But enough about that. Let's talk about depression. As I've said before, Mike and Sully's antics are pretty perfectly paced, but the real emotional core is Boo, who, fun fact, my phone keeps autocorrecting to boy. That's fun. But this is probably the most self-explanatory segment here. Boo is a little girl. She's innocent, she's cute, so we're basically instantly endeared to her, and we don't want her hurt. And she and Sully are basically daughter and father, so of course, when she cries after Sully scares her by accident, complete waterworks. That, and the ending. Oh Christ. The ending. I was like 3 when I saw this, maybe even younger. I still bawled when Sully left Boo. I still do. But the ending, when it's revealed how long Mike was slaving away on putting Boo's door back, and the just long enough build up to Sully opening the door, and the way Sully says Boo, and Boo says Kitty, and the way Sully's face just lights up. God, I literally broke into tears writing this. I'm not even exaggerating. I love this movie so much, you guys. You probably didn't know that. You don't understand this. I know I'm really subtle about my point, but I love this film so much. This is legitimately my favorite scene in any Pixar film ever. Any film ever, potentially. Just the ending of Monsters, Inc. I even more than the ending of Toy Story or the beginning of Up, this film, this one scene just basic perfection. Everything from Boo saying goodbye to the revival of Monsters, Inc. being now more comedy focused to, of course, the door. Just, I love this movie. I love this movie so much. So before we wrap it up, I should cover the two elephants in the room. Monsters, Inc. made an entire franchise for itself, though most notably it got a prequel and TV series. Monsters University I feel like I like more than most. It's well animated, funny, and has a great message, but I do have some hang-ups. For one, did anyone really want to see a prequel? The first film told you everything you needed in just one film. Mike's relationship was perfectly laid out in the first movie, and of course, this counters the whole "you've been jealous of me" line. Also, I really don't like what they did to Randall. His appearance just kind of makes him look pathetic in hindsight. And he doesn't do much in the story. It just feels like they shoved him in because he's a popular character. I might even rewrite this at some point in the future, because I'm that level of annoying fanboy over a children's film. Besides my very biased, this isn't exactly what I wanted, so it sucks complaint, I actually really do like Monsters University. If Monsters Inc. is a 10, University is like a 7 or 8. Also, I mentioned stuff about the background characters, like they don't look like good in the original film, but that's like lighting and stuff. I'm one who feels like the monsters in University feel off, like the new ones. They just don't fit with the old designs. Same thing with Monsters at Work, actually. Speaking of which, Monsters at Work. It came out this year, and I really enjoyed it. It was so nice to see these characters again, and yet they all feel like themselves. Everyone has their old voice actors back, besides Fungus. There's no Fungus among us. I want to kill myself. But I love them all so much. I love them. They are my children. Please never leave me again. Mike and Sully may now be the owners of Monsters Inc., but they're still just two guys stumbling around to their jobs. Roz can't be in this show because she's revealed to be a CDA in the end of the movie. So they introduce her sister, who's just Roz again, and I love it. Mike has his edgy Shadow the Hedgehog rival, and it's beautiful. I enjoy little nods to the first two films. And while it's definitely more focused on comedy than the movie, which is the perfect mix of humor and emotion, humor is pretty good. Every episode has at least one big laugh. The new characters, though, is what I'm a bit more mixed on. Tyler is serviceable enough protagonist. I like the look into a monster hyped for being a scare. Now it has to be a jokester, but that's about it. He's just kind of serviceable. Fritz is a nice guy, but that's all there is to him. Val and Cutter are also fine. They're all just fine. But then there's Duncan. He is an annoying, obnoxious, self-centered, slimy, insufferable jerk, and he's the best new character. I love him. Guys, he's supposed to be the rival. He's Randall, but on a lower scale. And I think he's funny. Yeah, I seem to be alone liking Duncan. Wouldn't be the first time. But I love this guy. He's the most consistently funny here, besides the old characters. I just love how snarky and jerkish he is. I do wish they didn't retcon his character development from the vending machine episode, though. We still have a fun character who isn't absolute jerkface, just mostly one. He still works even as Tyler's friend. The animation is fine enough for a TV show. It's kind of sad we only have 3 options for Disney shows based off movies. Have animation that's worse than the original by a lot, just a little bit worse, or completely different. Maw falls into the second category. The best episode was the Abominable one. It's the best combination of old characters interacting with new ones, and it even answers the question a lot of people had: why the Abominable Snowman was banished, while connected to the overall story of Water News from the first movie. I like the series enough, though. Again, it's just fun to see all these characters again, and it's still pretty funny. I hope season 2 has an episode where they meet Boo to just fully kill the Pixar theory, and bring back the main emotional crux of the original. And also another where they bring back Randall. Please bring back Randall. Please, I haven't seen my son in years. I miss him. I miss my son. He's probably so cold and lonely. Where is my son? So, there we go. I need a haircut. I don't know what there is to say here besides repeating myself. And no one wants that. Monsters Inc. has been and likely will be always my favorite film. From the characters, to the world, to the emotional beats, to the frick you of doing the thing I said I wasn't going to do. This is a different video of mine. I'm usually, if this is your first video of mine, I'm usually not this analytical. I'm a lot more of a filthy meme lord. For lack of a better word, I guess. But for something like Monsters Inc., I just really needed to talk about why I love this film so much. Why? I don't know. Everyone else loves this film, so I'm not like breaking new ground. But I love Monsters Inc. so much. It's just such an important part of my life, really. It's not even like part of my childhood or anything. It's like a part of me that I just needed to talk about how much I love this film. So, thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this video. And, yeah, I'll see you next time in a probably less I don't want to say this is a serious video or anything. It's freaking Monsters Inc., but like, yeah. Thanks for watching. Thanks for always watching.
Wazowski, you didn't file your paperwork last night.